Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for this PGA Championship. Going live this morning, so the morning crew will be around. Not really my choice. Not going to talk about that. If you guys want to see why we're live this morning, check out over there on my Twitter. We're just going to focus on the golf here, try and keep my mind off of things a little bit, and get ready for this Sunday slate. So let's go ahead, get ready for the DFS and prop side of things, and go out there and have ourselves a Sunday. The leaderboard is stacked. It's pretty bunched up there, which a lot had to do with the guys up top choking yesterday. And of course, without the Sunday pressure there's probably going to be even more this time around. So it should be a lot of fun. Maybe we have a chaser come up and steal this major championship without a lot of winning pedigree up there. I think there's a good chance that we see that too. So going to go through the weather, what to expect from the course, DFS, and then prop side of things after that. What's going on, chat down there? Some people obviously were a little bit thrown off because it's a morning stream. What's going on, Derek? What's going on, Doug? I appreciate that. What's going on, Don? Wins a lot. Derek, everyone down there. Let's go ahead and just hop on into this. So I see you guys down there in chat. I appreciate you guys, everyone with the kind words and whatnot. Got Philly down there, Steven. We got Joanne, J-Miz, all of you guys down there. Let's get this thing rocking. So let's just start with the weather. So course played easy, right? Everyone knew that. We knew it was going to play easy yesterday, so I don't think we really have to talk about that. But the weather for Sunday is just as good. So if you're just entering props before lock, if you haven't already checked the forecast out, they're calling for next to no wind. So in terms of your highest winds, they're going to be in the early afternoon. And even at that point, it's only about 5 miles an hour of sustained winds out there. So I do think that you're going to see just as good scoring out there today, at least from the conditions perspective. But they're going to have some tee boxes moved back a little bit, right, closer to its full length, and probably some tougher pin locations. So though it played about 1.45 under par yesterday, it's probably going to be closer to like a 1 under par scoring average. So maybe a little bit less scoring than what we had out there for round 3, but still going to be plenty of ceiling rounds to be had. So really, there's not going to be a huge weather edge when it comes to playing like one set of tee times versus the other. But what I did for today, right, was I emphasized the scoring even more, right? Those points are going to matter a whole lot more for today than your placement, right? Obviously, finishing top 5, top 10 has its benefits out there for your Sunday Showdown lineups, especially with the introduction of placement points, which if you're new to this, maybe you don't know how the Sunday scoring works. You get points just like you would for a main slate out there with the Sunday Showdown, but it's not the end all be all. So the reason I bring this up here is the difference between first and fifth, which is a pretty big difference, right? Between winning the golf tournament and then just finishing top 5 is less than a birdie difference, right? It's about a 5-point difference between fifth and then first. And you'll see down here, you get nearly 6 fantasy points for a birdie. So when I say that the placement points are a little bit overrated and that we should focus more on the scoring, that's why, right? You're getting a whopping 6 points per birdie. And if the scoring average is going to be 1 under par, you're going to see a lot of people shooting low. Well, the guys that make 6, 7 birdies are the ones that are going to score the most fantasy points, right? So I know it seems pretty straightforward, but it's worth pointing out because all of the ownership is going to be on the guys starting in 1st through 10th, right? All the guys at the top end of the board are going to be getting that attention. And with a golf course that is playing scoreable, I think that's something you might want to guard against a little bit. So weather edge isn't really out there for Sunday, except that it's worth noting because I think the scoring conditions are going to be so good. Let me go ahead, bring up my spreadsheet, and let's talk through some plays for today, which I've got some chalk we're going to take, right, like you have to do for Sunday Showdown, but I'm also just looking for high scoring, high upside players. If you're going to get 6, 7 birdie rounds out there and probably at least like 10 of them out there from the field, those are the kind of guys I'm more so looking to get to. So we're going to talk about the Xanders, right? Some Brysons, Victors, where I'm taking that are starting up top. But then we're going to have guys like Jordan Spieth that I'm mixing in, right? Lower owned option there. Tom Kim, same thing. Further down towards the 7K range, right? We've got guys like Hogard mixed in, a Svensson at sub 5%, right? A 2% owned Grayson Murray that I'm just playing based on their pure upside in terms of points. So you're going to get a good idea for some of my stands up top, right? Guys I think that can hold on to their position. And then afterwards, some chasers I think can pop off too. So let's catch them on chat, see what's going on, and then we'll talk through some of these plays. Which again, like you got to have some chalk. You're going to have some chasers. But I'll give you guys an idea of what I'm looking at. Where are we at? Appreciate that, James. So JT under 60.5 is plus money. So yeah, if you can get the plus money version, I'm all for that, Barry. So we'll talk a little bit more about the prop side later. But yeah, plus money on unders, especially for like a JT, a Rory. If you can find a Scotty plus money there at 67.5, I'd be all over that too. Of course, thank you, and good luck as well, David. Does JT normally get hot in the fourth round? You're asking the chat. Yeah, not normally, but he has before, right? He did that and won the PGA before. Who's surging into the top 10? We'll circle back on that one for you. Your lineups are in. Well, hey, if you have any questions about them, let me know. How do I feel about Soderberg today? I'd say a flyer play, right? Probably not a guy that you're using as a conviction play. Appreciate that, Cam. What's going on, Mark? Should you pick Shane Lowry or Matt Wallace in your lineup? Well, a lot of that depends on ownership, right? Shane Lowry, super chalky. So I don't have him on here as a play that I'm taking because I'm fading him out there for tomorrow because he's nearly 30% owned. So obviously Shane Lowry, if you're looking for placement points, if you already have pivots in your lineup, is totally fine, right? He has one of the better projections out there on the entire slate. The flip side of that, though, right, if you're going with Matt Wallace, would be to go out there and get some leverage. So what is Matt Wallace's price? Isn't he way cheaper too? So yeah, he's down here at 7,100. I don't know if that's the best one-on-one, right? Because you don't have to go down $500 there, right? You could still spend $7,500, $7,600 if you wanted to and take plays, right? So if you wanted to mix in like a Burmester at $100 less, if you wanted to mix in Keegan Taylor Moore, I wouldn't be against doing that as well. So all depends on your lineup, man, and what you're trying to accomplish with that player. Where are we at? What are my thoughts on fading all those guys up top? I'm fading 2 out of the 3. So if you're going to fade all 3, I think it's very aggressive. But yeah, I'm fading 2 out of the 3 of them. Like that 2 Barry. What was Barry saying? Yeah, the JT prop. I agree with that. Yeah, migraine faded me. Just dealing with some other stuff right now. Where do you see Scotty placing? Top 20? I think he's going to have a good round. It took him for under 67.5. So I think he's going to have a good day, Anthony. Issue is he's no chance at winning, right? So top 5 is probably out of the picture too. But top 10, top 20 is probably where he ends up finishing. Morning, Luke. You've been crushing it. Appreciate that, man. How about a little Aaron Rye for a low round? He'd be low owned, that's for sure. I've got him at, I believe, sub 10% ownership. And yeah, he's the perfect type of guy to get to. So let's just hop into this. So plays that I'm playing, we're going to have some chalk like Xander that I'm taking. And then there's going to be a bunch of fades with that chalk that I'm fading. So to give you an idea of guys I'm playing, we've got Xander, I'm playing his chalk. We've got Victor Hovland, Bryson DeChambeau. I'll play at a little bit of ownership. Collin Morikawa is a fade. Sahith Theegala is a fade for me. Who else? I'll give you a few more. I'm fading Shane Lowry. I'm fading Robert McIntyre. I'm fading Justin Rose and his bum ass at 40-something years old. I'm fading all the guys that aren't used to being in major championships, right? Collin Morikawa, I know he's won a few, but ever since then, right, ever since he was at the peak of his powers, this guy has choked 3 golf tournaments in the last year. So you get him to a PGA Championship, that Sunday pressure, you're going to have to find guys to fade. And for me, Morikawa seems a little bit fragile mentally. So he's the kind of player that I'll stay away from. Whereas Xander, you could say the same thing about, right? Obviously has choked plenty of times, right? Just look at last week at the Wells Fargo. So if you're going to fade all these guys up here, you can say the same thing about Sahith. Right now, Sahith, maybe not as much scar tissue as the other 2 players, but, he's not a major killer, right? He's not known as a closer or anything like that. So would you really be surprised if none of these guys went out there and just boat raced the field, right? If none of them went out there and shot 5, 6 under, I know that I wouldn't, right? I know that that's probably a pretty reasonable outcome. And that if that happens, that somebody like Justin Thomas could win this golf tournament. Hell, somebody like Bryson Victor could very easily win this golf tournament on only starting from 2 shots behind. So that's why, I've got one piece of chalk I'm playing, right? Xander Schauffele kind of feels like it's his time, right? So that's why I'm choosing to take him in that 11K range. Also, in my opinion, the most sustainable shots gained record out of all the guys that we could talk through. Just giving you an idea, right? Morikawa's putting way above his baseline, so I don't love to see that. Sahith Theegala is ball striking way above his baseline, which is kind of great to see, right? You love when guys are ball striking above their baseline. But in terms of guys that I think can go out there and repeat that in Sunday pressure, Xander Schauffele, for as much crap as we want to give him, is the third best player in the world at worst, right? Like there's no argument to say that he'd be outside that top 3 right now, especially based on form, all these top end finishes that he's having, the kind of consistency that we've seen from Xander Schauffele. So again, I give a lot of these guys crap, right? Especially Morikawa, right? I've not been shy to go out there and criticize the guy. I was the same way about Hovland, right? Before he went out there, started finishing, got out there to the top 3 of the world golf rankings last year. He can prove me wrong. I'd be totally fine to see that, right? But until I see it, I'm going to wait to see that, right? I'm not going to go ahead and try and buy early. So the one guy I may be doing that on is Xander Schauffele. And then outside of that, it's a lot of the lower owned plays. Another reason to fade those sort of players, right, would be the ownership. So you can see here, I have Xander at 36% ownership, which is crazy stuff, right? I mean, it's going to be impossible for me to really get leverage there. I'm personally going to have him in about half of my lineups, which means I won't have a full 2x leverage there. And it's why I'm not taking guys like Morikawa and Theegala, right? Morikawa, I have at about 35% ownership. I've got Sahith Theegala at about 30% himself. So if you were going to take more than one of those guys in your player pool, I mean, you essentially can't play anyone else, right? You essentially can't mix in the Braysons, the Hovlands that you want to. And rather than playing, 2 chalky guys up top and then moving on, maybe 3, I decided to go with the 1 super chalky option in Xander and then scattershot approach it a little bit more. So I've got Bryson in there, Victor Hovland, but there's also 1 or 2 other pivot plays that I'm taking from like $8,500 and above to go ahead and try and mix in some leverage. So obviously wanted to point out Bryson and Hovland as I think they have the best shot to finish top 5. But there are some other low-end options up here that you can consider mixing into lineups as well. So that's what I'll say about the 9-10K range. There's a lot of chalk up there. You're going to have to pick your spots. Just commit to it, right? And I think guys like Rory, Xander still have a lot of upside here. Sorry, Rory and Scheffler, I should say, still have a lot of upside here because it's all about the actual scoring, right? Like placement, whatever. Like it's going to help you out a little bit today. If Scotty shoots like -7, which we know he's capable of, right? He's going to have his caddy back. He had a really bad day yesterday. He goes out there and he shoots like -7. He's going to outscore Xander if he wins and only makes like 4 or 5 birdies, right? Those 7 birdies are going to make up for the placement points, right? I showed you the placement points off the bat, right? Those 2 birdies are worth about 11.5 fantasy points, right? That 11.5 fantasy points is more than the difference between like 10th and 1st. It's about actually, it's a little bit less than the difference between like 20th and 1st place out there in your placement points. So that's why I still think there's utility in taking those sort of players. So just because I'm pointing out some chalkier options doesn't mean that you have to avoid these other guys that are kind of out of it at this stage. Down here in the 8K range, there's not as much chalk. I think a lot of people are going to double spend up. So in terms of your lineup construction, I can see a lot of people starting with a Morikawa or Xander, and then almost all those lineups using a Sahith as their second man in. So what that's going to do is going to take ownership right away from these 2 in the 9K range, but also this 8K range is essentially unowned. And the 2 highest owned players here would be a JT and Finau, who have only got at about 16% projected ownership. So that should give you an idea for the kind of leverage that there is here, right? Cantlay is sub 5%. You have sub 10% owned Max Homa. Guys like Joaquin Niemann are sub 5% owned themselves. So if you're really looking to get different and get wacky about your lineup construction, if you pivot off of a Sahith Theegala and, even pivot off of like a Bryson and Victor Hovland, you've got leverage galore here, right? So if you're starting with, a Xander Schauffele up top, like I'm going to in lineups, but then you go down here and mix in like even a JT Finau works, right? Like 16% ownership is pretty reasonable out there for Sunday, right? Especially for a guy that's pretty close to contention. Even if you went with these kind of guys as your second man in, you'd be getting a little bit of leverage there, right? You'd be avoiding a lot of this chalk that's a little bit more expensive and changing it up with the lineup construction too, right? Because you're going to be more balanced, right? If you're starting Xander, then going the whole way down to the 8K range, as opposed to being more studs and duds with a 9K guy as your second man in. Let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. We'll talk about JT real quickly. Same thing with Tony Finau, and then talk about some value options after. What's going on? Anyone else prepping to go to bed? Yeah, you must have had a long night, huh? Where are we at? JT is the nuts. There you go. Hot takes before you go to bed, huh? Feels like a Hovland or DeChambeau. I hope so. They're DeChambeau is one of my favorite players, always has been. In Hovland, really good guy too. What's going on? Why I win? Thoughts on Tom Kim? I think he's a good pivot play. So I don't know if I have him on here as one of the plays that we're going to talk through, but I am playing him out there for tomorrow. So, well, actually, I do. Yeah, he's $7,700. I'm talking about him in a few minutes. I'll give you my full take. But yes, I think he's a pretty solid option out there for Sunday. Positive vibes and high frequency to you and my family. Appreciate that, man. All the best to you, Luke. Who is your favorite besides Murray under 6,500? So, yeah, we're going to talk about Grayson Murray down there. It'd probably be Svensson, though. They're at 4.8%. So I'll give you a few options. We'll talk about them more later. But, yeah, probably Svenny for me. Favorite sleepers for a sneaky top 20. So we already had a question about that. I'll circle back to you on that one, man. Thoughts on Alex Noren today? I don't really have thoughts on Noren. I guess that's my take. It's a very non-take sort of option. So he's 7,900. I mean, he's out of contention, right? So you're just going for placement. You're not going for placement points. So you're just going for pure scoring there with somebody like Alex Noren. He's low owned. I know I've got him at like sub 10% ownership. So you have that going for you. He's I don't know. I prefer Zalatoris, right? Like a Cam Young, like these sort of players that are just better than somebody like an Alex Noren, but it's not the worst play. He's kind of like Jason Day in this range, right? Kind of like a Tommy Fleetwood for me in this range. I think they're decent plays. They're playing some solid golf. So I think the price tag's pretty fair in all those options. But I don't think any of them really stand out. Right? Like the one that kind of stands out to me would be Willie Z, just because we know he can get hot in a hurry. We're obviously a really good iron player. Just has to get that putter working. So, yeah, I prefer him, but I think he's decent. Now, he'll be back for today. He was at a graduation yesterday. Your lineup starts Bryson Hovland. There you go. And you're rooting for Xander, though. Yeah, he's I feel bad for him at this point. I think he's going to get it done, though. If there was one guy, if you just had to make me pick one guy to win today, it's Xander Schauffele. This guy's going to bed. He's letting us all know. Good stuff, dude. You must be on the West Coast or something. Is Van Rooyen a sneaky good pick? I think he's sneaky. I don't know if he's a good pick, though. Time will tell, right? We'll have to see how he plays today. But if you're just looking for upside, then he's totally fine, right? Obviously can score, makes a lot of birdies. So I think he's a decent pick. Thoughts on Henley? Same thing as Noren for me. I have no thoughts on him. He's kind of just a guy in that range for me, right? Like if you're going to play him, it's for the ownership leverage. He's going to be sub 10% owned. I would say that Henley is appropriately priced, right? He's there at what, like the middle end of the 7K range or something like that? Where's Russell Henley at? I'm blind, so of course it's going to take me a second. He's mid 7K range, $7,500. I don't know if you're going for leverage. I think it's fine, right? Like he's lower owned than Burmester, that's for sure. He's about half the ownership of Shane Lowry. He's significantly lower owned than Robert McIntyre. So if you're just trying to get off this chalk here, I think Henley's a good option. I prefer Tom Kim. I prefer Dean Burmester as options that I would play, but he fits that mold quite well, right? If you're trying to get some leverage. And he picked 6. Yes, when we get to props. Third alarm got you up. Yeah, I was it took me about 2.5 alarms to wake up. Victory today. I like the way you're thinking. Game theory for single entry and also for cash. Game theory for everything today, right? Cash, probably not so much. Cash, just play the best plays. For GPPs and other contests, yeah, you want your game theory. Glover worth a thought. Well, always worth a thought, right? Always worth mixing in. I would say I'm very lukewarm on him too. I don't really have much thoughts about Lucas Glover this week. I mean, we know his game, right? He's ball striker. He's going to go out there. He's going to hit a bunch of greens. He's going to kind of bore you to death with the ball striking component. He's -4, so you're not really going to get placement points there. But kind of like most guys in this range, that's the case, right? Like no one down here is really in contention. Your best score is Rio Hisatune. They're at -7. I guess Lee Hodges is -10. So, he's getting closer to contention. But we're really just looking for pure scoring down here. Now, I kind of prefer the higher birdie players, like somebody like Hogard. Adam Svensson makes a lot of birdies too. But Glover could fit that mold as well, right? Maybe you like some of the shots gained metrics that you've seen from him over the last few days. He's going to be low owned. He's going to save you a bunch of salary. So if you want to go with Xander, then maybe a 9K guy like Bryson or Victor, right, as your second man in, he gives you the kind of salary to make that work. So there are some guys down here that we're going to talk up in a little bit, but he would fit that kind of role, right? Save salary, get some leverage. Appreciate that, Metro. Hadwin for the low round of the day. That's a hot take. I like your hot takes, Rami. You're not afraid to get after it a little bit, right? Put your neck out there. I like it. It's that's a bold one, but anyone could go super low. I love Nikolai, and you say you hope. Yeah, me too. I'm trying to stay away from it as much as possible, Tanner. I appreciate the thoughts though, man. It's you're 100% right. I'll just leave it at that. All right, let's talk through some of these plays in the 7K range. So, I guess JT, I like the hometown narrative. I like the fact that he's been striping the ball all week. Tony Finau, a little bit of a letdown yesterday. If I'm going to find somebody that I think is going to burst from, a little bit further back, like 4 or 5 shots into the fold, JT would be my pick. So I know somebody before was asking who I thought would jump into the top 20. The guy I think jumps from like near contention into contention is Justin Thomas. So I know a few people down in chat were mentioning him before for bets. So obviously I think he's a pretty popular pick out here for Sunday. That's why I have him at about 16% ownership. But when you compare him to the Thagalas, the Hovlands, the DeChambeaus, he's almost half the ownership, right, of some of those options there. So I think that, the ownership is reasonable, right? He's still going to get some ownership comparatively because of the fact that he's minus 10. But still a guy I'd consider. And Tony Finau for a bounce back, like you're telling me that the guy was one of the best ball strikers in the field for the first few days is now just going to get completely thrown to the side because of a little bit of a shaky round. Like I'll buy in that all day, right? Somebody that can just go out there, kind of return to what they did the first 2 days and then go out there and smash. Jordan Spieth will be super low owned, right? I've got him at 10%. The one thing I'll say about Jordan, right, for as much shit as you can talk about his game this year, myself included, I didn't bet him for the first time this week. I just couldn't do it. It was absolutely donating money if you were doing that. But he still makes a shit ton of birdies. He's top 5 in the PGA Tour when it comes to birdie or better percentage. So, one of the key stats I'm looking for on Sunday, right, obviously those placement points matter. That's why we've talked about a lot of guys so far that have a chance to finish in the top 3. Jordan Spieth probably isn't, right? But you know what he can do is he can make 6, 7 birdies, right? He's a top 5 birdie player, like I just said. You're going to have the perfect conditions out there. He'll be aggressive because he's minus 8, essentially is out of it right here on Sunday. I like that for some of your chasers. So if I'm going to find guys that I'm taking at low ownership, I know we had a few people throwing out like a Norn, a Henley. The reason why I don't take those sort of players as my chasers is they lack aggressiveness, right? Like I think a Henley's a perfect example of that, where he'll bore you to death with golf, right? He'll have plenty of bogey-free rounds. He's not afraid of shooting something like 2 under par with like 3 birdies and 1 bogey. That round works for main slate, right? Over a 4-round sample, it makes a bunch of cuts. It gives you a lot of top 25s. What it doesn't do, though, is give you a ceiling performance, right? It doesn't usually give you that 7, 8 birdie round. Now, they have their moments, right? Especially like Russell Henley. He'll go out there and have his day. Alex Norton, too, right? Especially of late, both of them have had some more ceiling rounds. But historically, right, you want the players that are more aggressive, the ones that'll go out there, take more risks. And Jordan Spieth is the perfect example of that, right? High birdie player takes a lot of risks. Now that he's minus 8 a little bit further back, he doesn't have that, doesn't have as much to lose, right? He doesn't have that unwillingness to go after a lot of those pins. Say the same thing about Tom Kim, minus 8, same score. So they're close enough to where if they have a ceiling round today, they might finish in the top 10, which would be huge from the placement perspective, but more so just about the aggressive mindset, right? Tom Kim, another high birdie percentage player, not afraid to take aim at any pin, especially when he's not in contention. So $7,700, give me him as a little bit of a chaser. In terms of some chalk down here, I'll mix in Dean Burmester, also Lucas Herbert, 2 live golf players that I just think are better than what most other people think, right? Like I watched the live tour. I'm not afraid to say that I think the players over there are just as good, if not better, than some of the guys on the PGA Tour. And I think you see that this week, right? Obviously, Bryson, contention, Dean Burmester, who a lot of people didn't even know before this week, obviously up there in the top 5 as well. These sort of players are going to be lower owned because people don't like playing the live guys, right? You saw that even for the main slate this week. Now, 2 years ago, when this first came around, it was a bigger effect than what we see now. Like, for example, Brooks, when he won the PGA last year, was even after the major, the Masters, as I say, when he went out there and almost won, he was like sub 20%, right? You had guys like, who's a good example? Phil was like 0.5% owned. That doesn't quite happen anymore, right? People are starting to play these live guys, but I think you're still going to see that in this Sunday showdown ownership, right? So just like comparatively, I've got Burmester at like 15%. Shane Lowry is nearly 30% owned. I've got McIntyre. Even guys like an English, a Thomas Dietrich, and about the same ownership level as a Dean Burmester, despite Burmester actually being higher up on the leaderboard, right? Despite Burmester being one of my favorite plays heading into the week. So I'll take him at 15%. Lucas Herbert, you can say a lot of the same about, right? He's been playing really well on the Live Tour. That is why he got an invite into this week. And it's not been like he's winning over there, but he's been top 10ing a lot over there on the Live Tour. And that kind of consistency is, I'm glad they rewarded it, right? Obviously, a lot of those guys are making the Live Tour look good by going out there and finishing in the top 10 so far, top 20 so far. We'll see how they finish it out. So, I kind of like the guys like Herbert out here for Sunday because 10% ownership is not bad, right? Like you compare that to an Eckroat, I've got it higher ownership, a Dietrich, I've got it like nearly 15%. 10% ownership down here is about average. It was about par for this range. And if you're telling me we're getting an average ownership number on a guy with legit top 5 upside, like I'll take that all day, right? Especially on somebody that's in such good form, whether people want to admit that or not. Down here in the 6Ks, I've got 2 guys I want to point out. So you've got Nikolai Højgaard, who I know Ross down there was looking forward to playing today, and then Adam Svensson and Grayson Murray. So actually 3 of them. I forgot that we had Grayson Murray the whole way down there. These 3 players are all aggressive. They're all high birdie percentage players, all ball strikers. You get that with all 3 guys here, but they're power players that can take advantage of the par 5s, right? These are the sort of guys that have the firepower, the horsepower to make 6, 7 birdies. And that's what we're going to need out there from the Showdown perspective. So they're all super cheap. They all open up a ton of salary savings up top. And, there are more guys I'm playing down here, right? It's not just these 3 that I'm mixing into lineups. Of course, guys, right? Patreon version has my entire player pool, but the guys I'm mixing in, right, are the better ball strikers, are the power players, the guys that I think have that ceiling potential, as opposed to more conservative players, right? So to give you an idea of maybe guys I'd be avoiding, which I always hate doing this, but I think it's a good exercise here. Like, EVR thinks aggressive. I think he'd be a good target out here for Sunday, but like I worry about Brian Harman. Like I hate to say it, but I kind of worry about Brian Harman. I love the stats for the guy. He's hitting the ball extremely well, but I worry that has the firepower to make those 6, 7 birdies, right? He did it round 2. So he's shown it this week a little bit, but those shorter players, they're not going to be able to take advantage of those par 5s as easily. You say the same thing about Patrick Reed, Justin Rose, right? As a little bit of chalk. These sort of players I kind of worry about their ability to go out there and make 6, 7 birdies. So I prefer the more loose cannons, right? The players with a little bit more volatility and going in that direction. Let's catch up on chat. In terms of the guys I think they're going to move up into the top 20, if I had to give you one pick, I think Tom Kim is probably my favorite to go out there and move from outside of contention into contention. If you're talking about a more chalky piece, that is probably JT for me. So I know we had a few questions on that aspect before. Those would probably be my main options to move into contention. It's worth noting, guys, we only have 15 minutes to lock, so we're gonna build a lineup together real quickly. But yeah, we only have 15 minutes until the contests are all gonna lock. So make sure you guys are already building your lineups, right? Make sure you already have your exposure in, if that's something that you guys can do, and don't miss lock at 7:45. Because that's about the only thing that you can't do in playing PGA DFS, right? You can have bad days, you can pick bad players. That is, I don't want to say acceptable, but it's understandable, right? To pick bad players, to have a bad player pool. The only thing that's not acceptable out there in PGA DFS is to not enter your lineup. So make sure you have those in. You can see up here, right? 15 minutes and 30 seconds left until that happens. Get some water in me and let's do this. Where are we at? %, choo-choo, birdie. All right, there with you. Appreciate that, Denny. I got you. Jordan's going to be at every flag. Yeah, a couple guys like Tom Kim, same thing. Those are the guys that I really want for Showdown. Like you're going to have the winner. That's pretty obvious, but those are the kind of guys that are going to win you today's slate. How can Scotty be optimal? Shoot at -5 or better? He'd probably have to shoot -6, -7. Especially because he's 13 grand. He's going to have a really, really good round. So he's one of the few players that I kind of worry about scoring enough to actually pay off, because, if he had a chance to finish top 5, it might be a little bit different. Maybe he was getting a placement up top, but at 13 grand, that takes you away from a lot of the guys in contention in the 7, 8, 9K range. And I kind of worry about that. There's a lot of opportunity cost involved with taking a 13K golfer on the slate. I do not think that they'll be firmer today. It rained yesterday, rained the day before. maybe a little bit firmer, right? Obviously, it'll dry out a little bit, but not much. Thoughts on Coles and Billy Ho? So I don't love them for this golf course. It's a little bit of a long track, right, for those two guys to get there. Now they're going to be low owned. They're decent pivots and GPPs, but they're not the kind of guys I'm looking for, right? I prefer the power players, the guys that make a little bit more birdies. Will you tinker or not? That is the question. That is always the question. Yesterday you had Rose and Lowry in. Yeah, don't tinker then if you did that yesterday. How are Ryan Fox's stats? It's a good question. I'll let you know. So let's see. Let's go over here to the live stats. Do I have the right tab up? Make sure. Good. We do. Let's see. They can't be that great, right? Because he's not playing very well. But yesterday he lost in every category but off the tee. That's not great. And then let's look at his event stats, which I'm assuming are a little bit better. He's no, he's not. He's losing in every category but off the tee. Not great. Not great, Bob, when it comes to the shots gained metrics, but we've seen crazier things happen. Shane Lowry's shots gained metrics before yesterday were absolute horseshit, right? Just to give you an idea, round 2, Shane Lowry gained 3 strokes of the putter and lost with every other category. And then Saturday goes out there and gains, 8 strokes to the field with his shots gained. So it's possible, that's for sure. But yeah, the stats aren't great. Harmon shorting is something you can get behind. See what you did there, shorting. What do I think about Hisatune? So he's kind of just one of those guys to me. Like he's like a 5.5, 6 out of 10, right? If I had to go out there and give him a rating for today, the shots gained metrics from yesterday were really good on approach. So that 6 out of 10 maybe just went to a 7, 7.5 out of 10, right? After seeing the approach stats. But I don't know. He's not the kind of player that really fits this course, right? He's not the longest player. He's more of a putting specialist than anything, which is why it's surprising to see him gain nearly 2.5 strokes on approach. So yeah, I think I'm like a 7 out of 10 on him now. Now I don't have him in my player pool, but now I kind of wish I did. That's for sure. And I don't have time to put him in, so he's going to stay out of the pool, unfortunately. A lot of disrespect for the live players. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, DJ, right, didn't have the best week, but yeah, even he was disrespected. I mean, dude, his price tag for Sunday, I'm playing him, by the way, out here for today. What is his price? He's $7,000. I mean, like, what are we doing? A $7,000 DJ? No, the reason why I didn't want to point him out is I don't want to steam up his ownership, but I don't care how well or how poorly DJ is playing. He should not be $7,000. It's craziness. And you got a 2-for-1 and a 3-ball with Fleetwood. He lost it, but still, yeah, exactly. Like the odds, the numbers, they're just too good to pass up. You got Hovland to JT under 68.5. We'll have to see. I feel like they have 69 lines on Underdog. Maybe we'll take them there. You were in second yesterday towards the end, but got changed, fell to 15th. Yeah, that's how it goes most times, man. Smash a like button, appreciate that. Absolutely. Go ahead, do so if you guys haven't already. Thoughts on Hideki? So Hideki, I can more so get behind. So some of the other questions you've got, right, are just about guys I think are average, maybe above average plays. Reason why I think Hideki is a little bit more intriguing to me is he is really aggressive. He is starting further back, right? He's at -8, so he's starting top 20. He's at the kind of point where if he has a low round, right, shoots like 5 under, he's going to top 10, right? So he has that kind of potential from the placement point perspective. But what you really like about Hideki is that he can throw darts, right? Now, yesterday lost strokes on approach. So stats, not so great, right? But we kind of know the player that Hideki is, right? He's long. He has the power to take advantage of the par 5s. He has the firepower to go nuclear low. I mean, just look at his win at the Genesis, right? If you need any sort of evidence for the kind of upside that he has. Now, if we go to the full event averages, right, get an idea of how it's looked all week, it's much more consistent, right? It's gaining in 3 of the 4 categories, a slight loser off the tee. That iron play, which was a little bit sour for round 3, right, was a gainer over the first 2 rounds. So, yeah, Hideki, I like. He's a high upside play. Playing 5 lines or less today and how much X? Well, if you're playing 5 lineups and you plan on playing Xander, honestly, if I had 5 lineups, I'd use them in almost every single one. World Tour and live builds. Let's go. Yep. The World Tour ones too are pretty nice. Like Jordan Smith, right? I know he's not having the best week. At least he made the cut for us, right? Any idea on Taylor Moore? I love him. And One of the reasons I didn't talk him up is I'm trying to keep the ownership lower. So let's keep that between you and me, right? Let's stay hush about that one. But yeah, -9, high upside guy. He's powerful off the tee, high birdie percentage player, good putter, which, if you're a good putter and you're a good ball striker, that's kind of what I'm looking for. So I've got to say, Taylor Moore has really leveled up this year in 2024. And it's just so much better, so much more consistent now than what he used to be. So yeah, I like Taylor Moore. I like Keegan here too. And I like Dean Burmester. I think this mid end of the 7K range, like there are plenty of pivots off the super chalky like Lowry and McIntyre. So, if you're in love with that chalk there, the two Europeans, right? McIntyre, DP World Tour, Shane Lowry as well. I guess I understand. Like play your chalk if you want to, but I really like a lot of the pivots. And yeah, Taylor Moore is one of those guys. Up at 4 in the morning. Now that's dedication to watch your boy Luke. Hey, I appreciate that, man. Thanks for stopping by. That's a sweaty tryhard for you right there. Getting up at 4 a.m. It's early for me too. I'm usually up like 3 hours from now, if I'm being honest. Fully awake, that is. I'm normally awake by like 9, but not fully there yet. Terrell Hadner, Fleetwood. I would go Fleetwood. I have to say I'm like a 6.5 out of 10 on both. So I don't love either, but slightly favor Fleetwood there. Ben Coles, if he shoots 69 or better, you feel like he's a must play. Yeah, he probably is a must play. Most guys would be a must play if they shoot 67 or better. He's kind of just a guy to me, man. Like I hate to say that. Like I'm not trying to be disrespectful when I say that about a guy, but he's just a guy. I mean, I don't really know what else to say, right? He's gaining a bunch of the putter, which Ben Coles tends to do, right? He's a pretty good flat stick player. But everything else is non-impressive, right? He's gaining with the approach play, but it's very, average stuff. It's nothing crazy. Off the tee is pretty respectable too there. So I don't know. If you really like Ben Coles, if that's something you're looking to tail, then for sure, right? By all means, feel free to play him. I kind of worry that there's a letdown coming, right? Because he eagled 4 yesterday. That tee is going to be moved back. He made all these birdies, right? Just for round 3 stats to give you a perspective. Where's he at? Where there he is, right? He gained 4 strokes with the putter yesterday. Like that is going to be almost impossible to back up. So I would probably stay away. That's just my take on it, though. Off the tee is there. Yeah, dude, I love EVR. It's not even so much the stats. It's just knowing the kind of player that EVR is. EVR is extremely aggressive. He's a high birdie percentage player. In fact, he's a top 30 player on tour in birdie percentage. And where's he at? I know he's further back. He's not a guy who's going to get placement points for us. You can see right yesterday lost a bunch around the green, but everything else was in check, right? He gained with the putter, he gained with the approach play a little bit. Nothing crazy there, but there's a difference between taking an EVR right at pretty much no ownership and then a decently chalky Ben Coles. So if we're going to look at the full event stuff, just get a better idea of how EVR is playing, you'll see here that he's gaining off the tee, gaining with the putter. The iron play is what we need to come around, right? So that is a worry to me, right? But I'm okay taking guys that are a little bit sketchy like EVR when they're only going to be sub 5% out, right? When they're going to be a true pivot that you only have to play in 10, 15% of lineups, I'm okay taking on a little bit more risk. And you can say the same thing about Ben Coles too, right? Like Ben Coles, maybe not my favorite play, but let me double check his ownership on my other tab. I don't think that he's out of hand with ownership. So let me double check on that. Ah, shit. So I don't have a way to bring that up, guys. My apologies. The spreadsheet that I use to make my projections, I usually copy that, make a new version, and then black it out here for the live stream. But I, for some reason, forgot to do that. So I'm gonna have to download it off my Patreon or something and check that out a little bit later. Where we at? Taylor Moore was your last man in. Yeah, let's keep quiet about that though, right? We don't want other people playing them because we need them to be low owned to pay off. Spieth or Finau in the $600. I would go. So it depends on the rest of your lineup, right? So Spieth, if you need leverage, if you're taking a bunch of chalk in that lineup already, I would go Finau if you already have some pivots. So if you have a few guys that are starting, let's say T19 or worse already in your lineup, like at least 2 of them, then maybe you go Tony Finau, right? But if you have all guys that are starting in the top 20 so far in your lineup, then Jordan Spieth is probably the best option. I think that Rye is a decent play. He's kind of like a 6 out of 10 for me. So just like, I think he's an okay option. Good luck, everyone, on Showdown. Yeah, 5 minutes until we lock, so best of luck. Gooch today, I took him yesterday. He had his ceiling round. He made 5 birdies. I would say that he's probably like a 5.5, 6 out of 10 if I was going to rank him, right? Like I think it's a respectable play. He's a great player. I think he's mispriced. Like he should be way more expensive than he is. Speaking of, right, he's $7,100 out here for the Sunday slate. I mean, it's kind of like DJ at $7,000, right? Like it's just way too cheap. You go out there, you shoot like 4 under par, you get to the optimal. I think that he's a decent option. Now, I like DJ a little bit more, but I think Gooch is a pretty solid option too. All right, let's build a lineup real quickly in like a minute because we only have like 2-3 minutes before lock. And then we're going to talk props for the next like 15-20 minutes after. So obviously really wanted to focus on DFS before lock here when that happens, which happens in 3 minutes. So let's do this real quickly. So when I'm building lineups, guys, this is what I mean by making sure you're putting in pivots, right? So you're going to have your chalky guys like Xander that you might be playing, maybe even like a Justin Thomas, right, who's getting some ownership himself. Down here in the 7K range, right, you may also play somebody like Burmester, right, that's getting some attention too. But just know where you're going to take that chalk, right? I've got 3 players that I'm okay taking as chalk. My last 3 spots, I'm going to make sure are all relatively low owned. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to throw a Tom Kim into this lineup. Down towards the middle end of the 7s, I'm going to throw in a Taylor Moore at reasonable ownership. I wouldn't say low ownership on Taylor Moore, but reasonable. And then for my last man in, right, you can see all of these guys are starting in the top 20. So it's not like anyone's a true pivot at this stage. But because Tom Kim, Taylor Moore are reasonable ownership, I mean, even Burmester, right, we got it sub 15%. This kind of lineup will work as long as my last man in is like a true pivot, right? Like we're going to need one spot where we're really getting different to the field here. And DJ could be that guy, right? Taking somebody at sub 5%, super cheap to round off that lineup, or even leaving a little bit of salary on the table and going down here and throwing in, like, I don't have any options I really like in this range, but like it could have been a McNeely, a Patrick Reed if you want to. You can even go the whole way down to Hogard if you wanted to and take him with $400 on the table. This kind of lineup has all the things we're looking for, right? 3 guys that are capable of finishing top 5. Hopefully the winner, right? And Xander Schauffele, right? If you're going to play Xander, obviously you hope he wins. They go out there and pay off that price tag. And then you've got a Taylor Moore, Tom Kim, who might sneak into the top 10. And then Højgaard that you're just hoping goes nuclear low. So this is the kind of build that I'd be looking for. I want at least one sub 5%er in every single lineup. So Højgaard, right, is the guy that's checking that box for us. And then after that, I want at least 3 guys that can finish top 10, if not closer to 4, even 5, like we have in this lineup. So this is the way I'm going about it. Again, it's much more about the ceiling performance than it is the placement points, which is why I like the guys that are starting a few shots back, right? They're going to be lower owned. They still have the upside to actually get this top 5 placements, which is why I would build my lineups in this fashion. So if I was going with cash, which you only have a minute before lock, so it's probably useless to really go over this, but I'd be really balanced about it. I'd be taking guys like a JT, a Finau. I'd be playing a lot of like Bryson and Hovland. Schauffele, is great, but he's $11,000, right? He's nearly $12,000, right? Even a Morikawa at $10,000, it's just kind of tough to fit into lineup. So maybe you go with a Morikawa over DeChambeau, but it would be this kind of build to go with for the cash side. So that's all I've got for DFS. Let's see if there's any last second questions, and then we'll talk about some prop stuff. Keegan or Mean Dean is the last man in. I'd go Dean. I like Dean a lot. 2 or 3 top 10 guys in the lineup. Yeah, that's what I would do. 2 or 3, maybe even 4. If you're going to do a 4th, make it somebody that's like a 20th, right? Don't make it like 4 guys starting in the top 10. Good luck, everyone. May the variance be with you. Retweet to that one, that's for sure. You got Bryson, Hovland, Decky, Keegan, Moore, and Rye. The sniper line. I like it. I like all those plays, man. I think you're onto something there. So, yeah, best of luck, boss. You plugged in Bryson. I like it. It did Bryson. I hate to say it, but he like, and I hate to say somebody deserves to win a golf tournament, but he kind of does, right? Like he's been working his tail off. He's been in contention in so many majors. Guy was grinding out on the range till late night last night. Yeah, he's the one guy I'm rooting for the most today. All right, let me bring up my prop averages, which I did calculate last night. Of course, guys, for all the content that you see throughout these live streams, make sure to check it out over there on my Patreon page. That's where I post all the different analysis that I'm doing. So whether it's for the DFS stuff that you saw, whether it's my prop averages, prop slips that I'm entering, All of that was posted over there last night. So again, that was the only thing I was able to really do last night, but I was glad to be able to do that for my Patreon members so that they still had their projections and whatnot. All right, so let's go through this. So here are the averages from round 3. I think they're going to get a little harder. So I do think we see this get, maybe closer to a 1 under par scoring average. Birdie average maybe closer to like 4 per round. Bogey average probably closer to like 2.75. But I don't think it's going to be drastically different than what we had here for round 3. The reason why I think it's going to get a little harder isn't so much weather-based. It's not so much like the greens getting firmer. It's tee boxes, which like 4 will be moved back. Some of the par 3s were shorter out there for Saturday. And then tee boxes too. Sorry, pin locations, I should say. Tee boxes, right, being moved back, and then the pin locations being a little bit more tricky. Those 2 factors, right, are something that we almost always see out there on Sunday, which is why I'd probably put it closer to a 70 scoring average. But with that being said, a lot of props that I like. So we're going to go with this Rory under in strokes, this Scotty under in strokes over here on the underdog side, which are both 0.5 lower over here on Prize Picks. So you can see they have Scotty at 67 strokes there. He's at 67.5, Rory, that is, over here on Prize Picks. And I want to bring up Draftkings real quick because they do have strokes lines up. To give you an idea of why I think there's value there. So it's not just the conditions. It's not just the fact that Rory's won here before. Scotty is the best player in the world. We also have some sportsbook line value behind us as well. So let me share my screen. I've just brought up DraftKings so that we could do that comparison here. But you'll see that somebody like a Rory McIlroy is even money at 67.5, right? He's juiced the same in both directions. So that's another 0.5 discrepancy in our favor. If we go up here to Scotty Scheffler, right? He is minus 140 for the under at 67.5. So in both cases, we either have that 0.5 discrepancy or a bunch of juice in our favor, which is why I'll take both of those props. So it's, I think they're pricing this on Underdog a little bit higher, right? Because of those pins and tee boxes. But somebody like Rory, right, to go out there, gain 2.5 strokes to the field, right, feels pretty reasonable. And Scotty, right, even though he had his worst round in God knows how long, right, out there yesterday, it's still Scotty Scheffler, and you're still getting a minus 140 projection there. So pretty decent value on both spots, and that's what we'll take for Underdog. Over here in Prize Picks, and there's more posted on my Patreon too for Underdog, so feel free to check that out for any other props that I'm looking at. But over here in Prize Picks, I haven't entered a slip quite yet. So the one prop that I want to look at here is this Xander under on fairways, which I'll 100% be entering into this slip. He's got to find something to pair it with. So I'm bringing up Caesars William Hill real quick so I can show you guys some of the fairway props that they have up over there. They're the only big sports book that covers these. So they're the only data point that we can compare to. And what you'll see, I guess they locked all of them because the round just started. But what you would have seen if you brought up the site before is that they had Xander Schauffele at 9.5 fairways, and he was even money on both sides. So it looks like they're putting some of these back up on here. But yeah, Xander Schauffele down here, you'll see, right, is at 9.5 and even money, just like I was saying. So over here in Prize Picks, he's actually at the same number in Underdog. If you wanted to mix him in over here too, I'd be taking the under at 11 fairways, like all day. Now, this may have actually just been bumped, which would not surprise me. See, so they actually took it off the board over here when it comes to the fairways. But over here in Prize Picks, he's at the same number, and that is just way too high, right? To get to 12 fairways, he can only miss 2 on the day, which he's done the first 3 days. I mean, this guy has been hitting fairways, right? So credit where credit's due. Xander's gotten it done. The reason I worry about it is on tour, right? He's like number 30 in tour and driving accuracy. So he's not that elite of the elite tier guy. And more so, he's in contention at a major now, right? He's tied for the lead. Sunday at Valhalla, there's going to be a lot of nerves there, right? And usually the one thing that can kind of creep into your play when you're nervy out there on tour is a little bit of the miss off the tee, right? Sometimes you pull shots. Sometimes you overcompensate a little bit and play too conservative. So I think he's going to miss quite a few fairways. So we're going to take him as one of the 2 props I'm mixing in. And then these strokes lines are all lower compared to what we have on Underdog. So that's why I didn't have a slip entered over here yet, because just the board, in my opinion, isn't as valuable as what we have over there on the Underdog side. So let's try and dive in and figure out a prop to enter. You're getting in the Patreon next week. You got to get sharper. Hey, I'd love to have you, Phil. Feel free to join us whenever you feel comfortable with that. So let's talk through this. So we've got this under on Xander mixed in, and they did just post some birdie props over here on DraftKings. So let's go ahead and use those to compare real quick. Bryson is minus 175 for his over. Unfortunately, he's at 5 birdies, I believe, over here on Prize Picks. Yeah, he's already up at 5, but that would have been a real nice prop to take. That would have been a real nice prop. JT is minus 140. What is it? He's probably at 5 too, isn't he? Yeah, he's up at 5 birdies already. Anyone else that's juiced over? Hovland, but I believe he's also already at 5. Look at this. We could actually fade Morikawa and make this a double fade slip. And I don't think it's the worst play in human history. So where is Colin Morikawa? Or did he take him off for birdies already? Wait, they took Morikawa off the board and he's tied for the lead? That is wild. So something you could do over here on Underdog is you could put in Morikawa under 5 fairways. This is actually a prop that I've already taken for the under at 5 fairways. I thought they had him up here on Prize Picks, though. So that must just be something that they just took off the board. But something else that we could try and find here is somebody that's juiced under for birdies that they have at 5. So Finau, they have at 4.5. Do they have Sahith at 5 birdies? No, he's at 4.5. So look at this. Look at Morikawa, right, is 4.5 birdies here, right? But he's minus 160 towards the under. That's why at 5 birdies, I love the under on Underdog, right? We have that juice working that direction and a 0.5 discrepancy. So yeah, if you wanted to mix this in over there on Underdog, right, to make this a 3-man slip, I think that's a good idea. I was kind of hoping that we could enter this over here on Prize Picks, though. So unfortunately isn't going to be at our disposal. Yeah, these guys at 4.5 are just, they're not the best plays. They should probably be at 4 birdies, frankly, if you're going to take an over on them. So maybe we go with an under on strokes. Or maybe we just have this one prop. Maybe we don't have a slip over here because, yeah, guys, this board in general, like I think you're going to see decent scoring. I think you're going to see a lot of guys go under. Why would you enter slips over here when, especially if you're somebody like me, right, that thinks it's going to play pretty easy when you have better lines on Underdog? Like, I guess that's the reason why I'm so hesitant to want to give you guys another prop over here is that the far better options are over there on the Underdog side. Now, if I was going to try and find something just to make this work, we could try and find another under on fairways because these guys are all too high, at least compared to the sportsbook odds. So just to give you an example, where is Rory? There he is. So he's at 9.5 fairways here, right? And he's juiced minus 155 towards the under. Well, he's at 10, right? So he's 0.5 higher over here on Prize Picks. And we have all that juice towards the under here. So, you know, there are a bunch of props that you could take that kind of fit that description on Prize Picks. Those would be the kind of slips that I would go with. So just to give you guys another one, I believe Sahith may even have a line over here too. Yeah, so Sahith is at 8.5, right? And they've got him at 10 fairways hit. So I like that for sure. Do they have a Tyrrell Hatton line? Hatton is not a very accurate driver. So I would probably consider his under too. So yeah, he's at 9.5 and minus 155 under. So these are the kind of props that I'd be mixing in. This entire board's too high. Ricky Fowler should not be. Oh my goodness. Ricky Fowler should not be at 10. In fact, that is like my favorite out of all of them so far. We have Ricky Fowler under 10. This is going to be the slip that we go with on Prize Picks. In fact, I'm just going to enter this myself here real quick. These three have a ton of push equity. They're at 10, and they're almost all horrible drivers when it comes to accuracy. Now, do they have their days where they go out there and actually hit some fairways? Sure, right? Everyone does. Even I do out there on the golf course. But these guys are all routinely lower in terms of projection over here on Caesars. And you can see guys like Tyrrell Hatton are not only lower, but also have that juice working in our direction. And though we don't have props to compare to with like a Ricky Fowler over here, like we do have the or Tyrrell Hatton, I should say. Actually, yeah, we do have Tron. We have Hatton Thigala, obviously, that we can compare to. Ricky Fowler is even more inaccurate than the other two, right? So if these two were already values for under 10, Ricky Fowler is going to be even more so value to mix in. Let's bring up pick 6 now. So those were those two prop sites. Those are the categories I would really focus on. And then over here for the PGA Tour on pick 6, they've got a lot of high lines. So I would fade the hell out of Morikawa at 5.5. I would fade the hell out of Xander Schauffele at 5.5 birdies too. Who else? Oh my goodness. Yeah, these lines are just kind of crazy. I guess the 68.5s, those aren't as wild. Those make a little bit more sense. But yeah, these two birdie lines are for sure something I'd be eyeing up. Let's see, we got to find something to mix in to make this a 3-man slip. So if I was going to try and find a fade here, maybe McIntyre at 69.5. Now, I don't think it's value compared to the other sites. Yeah, so he's also at 69.5 on Prize Picks. So maybe not Mac. Maybe you don't take him as the over, but who else could we take? What is Lowry's projection? Let's cross-reference that one. So he's at 60. Look at this, 69.5 strokes. And then over here on pick 6, right, he's at 68.5, right? So this is the kind of slip I'd be looking at on pick 6. A lot of times, though, there are slates where like, wow, like this pick 6 slate is a ton of value. I don't necessarily see that, right? Because I still think we're going to see a lot of birdies, right? The reason why I'll fade a Morikawa Xander is because of the sportsbook line value, right? Morikawa is an entire birdie lower and juice towards the under. And Xander Schauffele is the same thing, right? He's at 4.5 as opposed to 5.5 on their sportsbook odds, and he's minus 150 towards the under. So if you're looking for plus EV plays, at least compared to sportsbook odds, these are excellent spots to get to, right? It's because they're the discrepancy and the sportsbook juice. The issue is that you have to have an over and an under to make a slip work. And this slip with Lowry is maybe not as valuable as those other two props. Now, to give you an idea, what is Lowry's strokes line? Let me find that real quick. They might not have, actually they do. So he's at, 69.5 and he's juiced a little bit over. So you're getting that one stroke discrepancy. So one discrepancy again, not as much juice, right? It's only minus 125 towards the over, but still a pretty decent slip that you can mix in. So hopefully it gives you an idea of how to attack this. I think there are even guys at 4.5 that you could take for fades. In fact, I've already faded Shane Lowry at 4.5 birdies over here on the underdog side. So you could potentially take that right over there on pick 6. And then, these bogey props, these par props, probably just not my favorite. So that's what I've got for the prop side. Let's see if there's any questions and then hop on out of here. Where are we at? Shattuck for over 3 birdies. So, that's on Prize Picks, right, where they have Shattuck. Here's the problem with the guy. Now, I don't mean to sound like, party pooper here. The guy is just making a shit ton of putts this week. I was watching the play. I even saw the highlights out there from yesterday. It's not like the guy is a terrible golfer by any means. He's not. But he went out there and he's gaining 3 strokes with the flat stick. He's getting, you can see 2.81 per round right there. He's losing around the green. He's losing on approach and he's losing off the tee. So for as good a story as it is, I mean, look at all these birdies, right? He went over in all 3 rounds. If there's a stat profile that is kind of due to come back down to earth, it's this one, right? Where a guy is just doing it all in one category, right? Kind of luck sacking it by making those 40-footer putts. That's the only pushback I'd give you there, is that it's feeling like it's a little bit putter heavy. Single entry X only 24%. That is great news. There you go. Wow, the one chalky guy we took is not going to be 40%. That is huge. Rory's at 5.5 seems high. It does. I do have to say, though, the sportsbook odds, especially like over here in Caesars, are actually spot on. They actually have them at even money there. So just to show you this, where are you at? Birdies are better. So Rory here, you can see he's juiced a little under, where he's minus 125 now for the under at 5.5. But him and Brooks are the only guys that they have at that number. They may have moved Brooks back. Let me see. Yeah, but actually he's still there, right? At 5.5 birdies. He is minus 165 towards the under. And then they also do have Scotty over there at 5.5 birdies. So it is a little bit high. Sportsbook odds would agree with you. I don't want to fade him, though, because I'm taking his strokes under, right? So I don't want to have conflicting sweats. And I think the strokes under, right, which is a 0.5 discrepancy, is a better prop than a minus 125 juice. That's my take on it and the way I'm going with it. The hand pick covered you for today, but 10 is definitely a bit high. Exactly. Like he might go over for any given slate, but he's inaccurate. And frankly, the sportsbook odds are 1.5 lower. Like that's the obvious value. Enjoy the day. Morning shows, of course. Best of luck yourself. You're looking at DeChambeau birdies. Which site? Because he's at 5 on Underdog. He's at, I believe, also 5 here. Sorry, 5 on Prize Picks, also 5 on Underdog is what I mean to say. 5 birdies is tough, though. I don't like taking overs at 5 birdies, 5.5 birdies for sure. I don't like taking overs on. At that point, I'd rather have a strokes line, right? These best players in the world, these elite tier players like Bryson, they're a lot cleaner with their rounds than your scrubs, the guys that'll make like 3-4 bogeys in a round. So if you're talking about a scrub, maybe I would like a birdie line more. But for somebody like Bryson, I'd rather have the strokes line than anything. He's not like a elite tier bogey avoider, kind of like a Xander Schauffele, a Patrick Cantlay can be, but he's a pretty decent one, that's for sure. I mean, he's won a U.S. Open, so I can tell you can keep it together. That's all I've got for this live stream, though, guys. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared for today and ready to get after it for Sunday's action. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and best of luck for all your exposure that you're getting to. I'm going to be watching the golf today, rooting on our guys, but if you haven't seen that update over there on Twitter, I guess I'll just say it now. I didn't really want to talk about it before because it's going to make me really sad to even have to think about, but just cherish your loved ones, cherish your pets especially. I have to put down my dog this afternoon, a little bit after the leaders tee off, so might be a little bit distant from the game today. So at least the first few hours of the round, I'll probably be doing something else. So just hug your loved ones, hug your pet if you guys can out there, right? I don't mean to make this sad. I don't mean to kind of be the doom and gloom at the end, but it's reality, right? Bad shit's going to happen. Bad shit's going to happen to things that you love, and you just kind of got to accept that, right? So, all right, I'll leave you guys there. Appreciate you again. I didn't mean to leave it to doom and gloom, but just I think it's an important message, right? Enjoy your pets, enjoy your family while you have them around, because they're not always going to be around, right? Unfortunately. So appreciate you guys. Like I said, I'll be back for the content all next week. Honestly, it's Charles Schwab Challenge, I think, that we have for next week. So not quite a major. It's not quite signature event, right? That we kind of be hoping for, but still a lot of golf to look forward to. So I'm looking forward to that, guys. Best of luck out there with your exposure. And I'll see you guys on Monday for all of that content.